Hello, and welcome to Steve's Mixtapes. My guest mixer this week is another one of those people that I've known forever on music forums, etc. But I've only met him in person once, possibly twice. We were just trying to work that out, and that was a long time ago, best part of 20 years ago, we think. So it's a real pleasure to reconnect with him. He is from Norfolk, but these days resides in Beckenham in London. He sent me a bio written in the third person, which says he managed a band as a teenager and was very briefly the bass player. He's been a fashion model, a model for a drawing class, not in the buff, you perverts, but probably not a model citizen. He has worked in a plastics factory, a variety of pubs, and a book wholesaler. Currently works in market research and as ITV's unofficial poet in residence. He's also a trained bongacero, if I'm saying that correctly. We'll come back to that. When he's not doing these things, he's either being a parent, a husband, or running, sometimes all of them at once. He co-runs Rogue Strand's poetry evenings and blogs at Wear the Fox Hat. A pamphlet of his poems collecting the data is out via Red Squirrel Press, and people that aren't his mum have bought copies. One of these facts is not true. So welcome to Steve's Mixtapes, Matt Riches.
Good evening, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, and as I said at the beginning, it's a real pleasure to see you after so long. We can't
much.
pinpoint the date. We think there may be two occasions we've seen each other in the flesh in the past. Once when I was on a course in London and we managed to sneak in a couple of sneaky pints at lunchtime. Hopefully I brought a packet of mints with me before I went back to the conference in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And we think possibly at a wedding present gig in Camden years ago. But we're both getting to that stage where you have to dig around in the dim parts of your memory to recall such things. So, mentioning a wedding present gig, that's how I first know you, of course, from the Wedding Present Forum. You haven't been on there for a long time, though, have you?
No, I seem to somehow fall off the radar. I'm not going to blame it on having a kid because it's absolutely not her fault. I think I think it sort of gradually drifted towards being on Facebook, and you would see people's updates there. Yeah. Around about the same time. So maybe it was around about when Florence was born and you moved on to Facebook and you just see everyone's updates there. So, and I think it also corresponded probably with a slightly quieter period in the band's career. Yeah. Possibly some of the lesser good albums as well, which, definitely made it less, and just work got busy as well around that time, I think. So it was never one thing.
And you're not alone in that. We've talked, with a few people about this. There are about a dozen of us left there who post regularly, but there's a few. John Marshall, you'll remember.
I do.
Come across Marshall. He's not on there anymore, though he's on Facebook. And there's a few. And it's understandable.
I have been back since and pop in. And I occasionally see people in real life. I haven't been to a wedding present gig for a long time, but I still see people.
There is still a thread with your name on it, the Matt Riches Stories from the News section, which I just brought up, which you started back in 2005. And it made me laugh. Not the very first news story you posted, but the second one, entitled "Boy Waited While Doctor Rode Unicycle." I don't know if you remember posting this, but a set of parents complains that their child was left waiting to be seen by a doctor who was riding up and down the ward on a unicycle.
I absolutely don't remember that story, but I am now going to go back and look it all up because.
Well, the hospital said we do regularly provide diversions that are not directly related to medical care. Many parents have commented favourably on this approach, and indeed about the unicycle. So, there you go.
Well, if I don't get a poem out of that, then I'm failing miserably.
Well, speaking of which, there are a few things about your bio I wanted to ask about. I was aware of your connection with poetry, and I was aware of the blog. ITV's unofficial poet in residence. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So it's a bit of a piss take. Lots of places will pay poets to do a poetry in residence gig where you'll come and sit wherever, so people can be like poets in residence in a library or in a factory or wherever. Lots of people. I think there was a Bridges poet in residence for London at one point, and you're basically you're given a residency there, and you have to come up and basically write some work while you're there. Now I work at ITV during the day, so I thought, well, and I'm a poet. Fuck it, that means I'm ITV's unofficial poet in residence. They're not paying me for that, but I have managed to get some work done while I'm there on my own stuff rather than.
Okay.
other things.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's hence the unofficial. One day I'll get them to pay me for it, but
And I was aware of the blog where the fox hat. I don't know where the name comes from though.
it's from a terrible joke about a play on words, which basically mean where the fuck's that?
Okay, yeah. I've just, as you said, play on words. It just suddenly dawned on me what it was. Okay, I was a bit slow on the
I
uptake
can
there.
only apologise in advance for any swearing that might come out of me because occasionally I let a little bit too much
That's
out.
fine. My mum, I think, has only listened to the episode that she appeared on
Fair
herself. So
enough.
that's all right. So collecting the data, I found a couple of reviews of this. It lists some of the topics of your poetry for tomato plants, a weather balloon, a troublesome supertanker, a fisherman's pond, and the Arecibo telescope,
Mm,
sun blessed, the Wim Hof method, and buttered dogs.
yes. Yes, they are. They are all present. I can confirm that absolutely.
Right. Okay.
I
I
think
must
it's called the Arecibo telescope.
Arecibo.
I
Okay.
think I may be mangling it.
What is the
Um,
Arecibo
it
telescope?
was a telescope that was built somewhere in South America in the 70s, I think, and it was designed to communicate out into space and send. Basically, it was a telephone call to the aliens,
Okay.
and they sent out in the message. I've got to get this right. I wish I had a copy of my book with me because the notes are there, but they sent out the building blocks of DNA, little drawings of man and woman, or man and a woman, the basically the building blocks of sugar, the numbers 0 to 10, and a couple of other bits. And it was basically like a hello text message being sent,
Oh.
and obviously no one ever replied.
Yet.
But the yet, well, if they have replied, they're going to find the numbers been disconnected because the telescope was shut down a few years ago. Yeah, and I think in my poem, I basically say, yeah, now that the poem's been shut down, basically don't bother coming here. We're a bunch of assholes.
Okay.
I always introduce it as one of my most miserable things.
Okay. Well, let's move on to your mix then.
Mm.
So, tell me. I always ask people about their process, whether they are, were you an agonizer?
Um, yes, to begin with, I agonised for a while. Well, when I was first asked, I wrote down a load of things under each category or each theme, and then absolutely agonised to whittle down some of them. Some of them were really easy, but there were about 3 or 4 categories that took forever, and it was actually the first one that took the longest to
Oh,
work out
okay.
where to go with.
Well, let's move on to that. So you're going for a bit of a Northern Soul.
Mm,
I don't know whether classic is the right word, but it's one of those deep cuts that the Northern Soul aficionados would probably appreciate. Eula Cooper, is it Eula?
mm.
Is that how you
Eula
say it?
Cooper, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Who actually had a relatively brief career. She released, I think, about 10 singles in the 70s, including this one, which is
Mm.
very good. She did make a comeback in the 80s. I don't know whether you're aware of this. She
I
released a
didn't even
single
know
called,
that. No.
a single called Feel So Right. It was released in 84, and you can tell it was released in 84. It's
Okay.
sort of slathered in very cheap and nasty sounding synths, and
Ooh.
really doesn't do justice to her
Yeah,
voice at
I'll
all.
not go running to look for that one.
Yeah.
I think all those 10 singles were collected onto one album,
Yes. Yeah.
which I think is named after this particular song. But yeah, there could have been a million Northern Soul songs to pick from this, or to
Did you
pick just
particularly
that
want a
song.
Northern Soul one to start things off?
No, in the end, it came down to, oh, hang on, I haven't got any in there. I should probably put something like that in there. And they're always guaranteed to be a banger, so you should probably start with the banger. Actually, one of the things that I nearly put on as my intro song wasn't quite hit the ground running, but I figured hitting the ground running doesn't necessarily have to mean out of the gates like a greased whippet. It could
No.
be something slightly slower, and I was going to start with something from a Cowboy Junkies album,
Okay.
because and it was a live album where she says, and it's the first song they play, and she says, "Oh, before I do any rock and roll, I like to sit down." And then it's like a nice gentle intro, and I thought maybe that would be an alternative. And then I thought, sod that, actually go with the banger.
Well, we've had a couple of Cowboy Junkies tunes. I think we've had a couple. Certainly, Johnny Mac, who of
Mm.
course you will know, chose their cover of Thunder Road.
Oh, of
Uh,
course, yeah, which I think he actually put on a mix CD for me years ago.
Quite possibly, and very, very good it is too. But anyway, let's hear this one now. So this is Eula Cooper with "Let Our Love Grow Higher."
Lift your head up to the sky.
A single from 1970, that was Eula Cooper with a bit of Northern Soul, Let Our Love Grow Higher. And if you don't mind, Matt, I'll dedicate that to our common friend Keg on the floor.
Yes.
Very into his Northern Soul dancing, and maybe as we speak, shuffling around somewhere up in the northwest with talcum powder on the floor and all the rest of it.
I hope he's actually capable of it, because I'm absolutely not. My hips, they do lie, or they don't
I
lie.
have seen video evidence, very brief video evidence of Keg sliding around the floor in that inimitable Northern Soul style. So what does slightly confuse me, he writes them up when he goes to these evenings, and sometimes only dances to 3 songs. So to me, if you're going to go to a Northern Soul night, you would have thought you'd spent the majority of the evening dancing, wouldn't you? Isn't that kind of the point? But
You'd hope so. And they're quite a big production number to dance to those things. So
yeah.
I'm not sure I'd last more than 2.
No, well, perhaps he's just very selective.
Mm.
Okay, then, Matt. So, usual question we ask before we get to the something old category is: are you someone? I mean, you mentioned somebody making you a mixtape earlier. Have you always been somebody who's enjoyed making compilations and mixtapes and the rest?
Yes, although it's not something I've necessarily done a lot for a long time. I used to love and I think a lot of your guests have said this when I've on all of the podcasts I've heard so far. The act of making a cassette was a wonderful thing, and it was a tangible, physical, time well spent thing of choosing, recording, possibly changing your mind and having to record over, and just that sheer act was a wonderful, wonderful thing back when had
Well,
the
I
double
think the
decks.
huge shift when we moved to CDs and the rest of it is when you did the tape, you actually listened to the music as you did it.
Yes, yeah, and it was still slightly joyous when you were doing it with the CD, because there was still, well, I know I've got to fit this to a certain amount of time now. There's still the act of ordering. There's still the act of consideration to that. And oh God, hang on a minute. I know I've only got so much space left, so I've got to change. I've got to change
Yeah,
my closing track, so maybe that means I've got to lose something else. So there was still thought to that. I think just it's lost its magic in the dragging 25 songs into a playlist. That
yeah.
said, I've got a playlist that's like 8 days long or something, that's just got
Mm.
loads of and keeps growing, and that's a wonderful thing. But that's just for me rather than for sharing anywhere.
Yes, I have something similar. My imaginatively titled Big Playlist,
Mm.
where every now and again I drag, 3 or 4 whole albums onto it, and it has something ridiculous like 7,000 songs in it. So if I can't decide what I want to put on, I just stick Big Playlist on shuffle and see what pops up.
They're
Um,
quite good for work, I think, as well, because I
yeah,
can work to those because I know the songs, and it's
yeah.
hard to listen to new stuff at work. And
Mm. And I've said it's like having your own radio station, isn't it?
yeah,
As I've said on a few instances. Yeah, I remember the excitement when we first had CD burners and all the rest of it was that ability to play around with the order, wasn't it? The dragging the songs about and get the right order was quite exciting. But I don't think we'll ever quite recapture that magic of sitting and piling the records or CDs up in order so that you could write them on the inlay card afterwards.
yeah. So I was trying to remember, because I had a mini disc player as well at one point that sort of
Oh right,
bridged
no, I never had one of those.
one that bridged the different. I can't remember now whether that was a drag and drop or whether you actually had to play to record onto that. It was a very brief, excuse me, dalliance with one of those things, but that was quite.
Okay.
I mean, when was that? That must have been That was pre-Florence, so that was probably like 2002, 2004, something like that.
Right, okay.
A
Well,
life
it
before.
took me a long time to adapt and get a CD player, to be honest. In fact, I didn't. I know this because it was my 30th birthday. I didn't get a CD player until 1999. So I was a bit luddite with all of that. But anyway, so onto your something old choice. Now, I didn't know David Axelrod, so I looked him up and was a little startled to find that he was an American political consultant who was best known for being the chief strategist to Barack Obama during his 2008 and 2012 presidential campaigns. So before I realised that that's obviously not that David Axelrod, were you aware of the politician called David Axelrod?
I'm going to say, in the back of my mind, I may have heard that, but I wouldn't have made that. No, I mean, if I'm honest with myself, no, I can't remember ever knowing that fact.
So anyway, the David Axelrod we're talking about was a jazz producer to begin with, I think, and then in the late '60s he started a solo career, and he released several albums during the '70s. And what I read about him was his characteristic sound combined heavily microphone drums and baroque orchestration and avant-garde themes, ranging from the environment to heightened mental awareness. And we talked about you being a poet before. There's a bit of a poetic connection with this as well, isn't there?
There is. So this is from an album, which I think he made two of. He's not someone I know huge amounts about, but this one is there's a Blakean, so
Mm.
art and poetry connection of this one's named and themed after the Blake thing of Songs of Innocence.
Mm.
Although I'm not sure there's a Heavy Thursday
No.
title in Blake, but
Yeah, I mean, any Fall fans, of which there may well be Fall fans, will probably be aware that Blake was a big favourite of Marky Smith's, and there's a few Blake references in the lyrics over the years, here and there. But I really like this. I didn't know about it. What I noted down was what DJ Shadow might have sounded like if he was recording in the late '60s.
yes, I think that's very fair. Yeah, it was one of those sort of left. I'm trying to remember when I first heard this song or heard about it. I suspect it was someone that I'd just seen mention it on Twitter, going, right, I've got to follow that down a rabbit hole.
Mm.
And then I was reminded of it because my wife took me to see a guy called Sven Runner, and it's very much that sort of imaginary soundtrack,
Mm.
nice jazz build kind of stuff that which you'll hear on this song, or which I know you've heard, but other people will hear in a minute.
Well, with you
That
mentioning
reminded
about
me of
work, I can imagine. I mean, it's. I haven't listened to the rest of the album yet. It's gone on the ever-growing list of
it.
things I've found out about via this podcast that I must listen to properly. And it strikes me that would be quite good music to listen to
It
on.
is, yeah. As is Sven Runner. They're all very good, and it was phenomenal live. I slowly listened to some of his other stuff as well, so it's I couldn't name any of them, but yes, there's a few solid groovers on Songs of Innocence.
So,
That's
why particularly did you choose this one?
just because I think, and I might get this horribly wrong. I think the drummer is Hal Wilner, the sort of great session drummer, but there are points on this when it's just like hearing the most. I think the phrase is in the pocket drummer you've ever heard, and then the way it just breaks down and then builds up as you go is it's great. There's probably 100 other jazzy songs that could have gone on this playlist, but this felt like a nice combination of everything.
That was David Axelrod with Holy Thursday, the something old choice of my guest mixer this week, Matt Riches. Right now, we have a standard question as well for something new. But before I get to the standard question, I did notice actually that for somebody who, well, guests who come on here tend to be of a standard sort of vintage, shall we say. Most people were born somewhere between the early 60s and the early 70s, I would guess, that appear on here. Not all of them, but for quite a lot. And therefore, we tend to get a lot of songs from the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. I did notice that 7 of your 10 are from the 21st century. It's a relatively modern collection, your mix. So are you somebody who keeps very well abreast of contemporary music? And if so, how do you do it? Because it's quite hard to do these days, isn't it?
Depends on what day of the week you ask me that question. So today I'll have to answer it for today's version. I don't know if I am, I think is the answer to that. I try and keep up. I think that it's probably a slightly cheating answer to say new to me. So that could be something from the 70s, it could be the 60s, the 50s, or whatever, or from last week. Yeah, going backwards, and I tend to go backwards and forwards. I hadn't noticed the 21st century-ness of this playlist. But in terms of trying to keep up with new things, I'm finding out about new stuff. It sort of comes from anywhere, really. A lot of people I follow, a lot of journalists or music journalists I follow, you'll see recommendations. And then that can often lead to a rabbit hole, a lot of podcasts. Following a lot of bands, actually, on social media, you'll see. Or we've got such and such a support act, or we really recommend this person, which is actually how I found this choice. Was someone mentioning the support act and going, right, okay.
Okay, well, tell me about Clementine March, who I'd not heard of before. She's based in London, but she's French.
Yep.
So how did you come across her?
So found out, I mean, you basically know as much about Clementine March as I do now, beyond the fact that she has 3 albums. This is from the most recent one, which came out about a month and a half ago, I think. But I found out about her through the band This Is the Kit.
Okay, not familiar
which is
with them.
primarily a lady called Kate. Well, they are a band, but the main person is a lady called Kate Stables, and I think they're originally from London. I think Kate lives in France now. Sort of folky, slightly folky DIY scene. So there's Kate Stables, and This Is the Kit, and a lady called Rosie Plain, who also plays in This Is the Kit, but also works on her own as a sort of session basis for hire. And then they were saying, "Oh, we've got Clementine March supporting us," and so I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, who's that?" And off you go, and you go down a rabbit hole, and the next thing you know, you're coming up for air 5 days later. 5 days later. But This Is the Kit. I'd really recommend as a look at. It's quite sort of repetitive in ways, but
well, as a full fan, I'm not going to argue with anything that's repetitive, obviously.
It's folky but repetitive in a way. She tends to hit on a phrase, and you'll hear it a lot in her song, but very enjoyable stuff. There's a nice live album they put out recently as well. But,
so, well, whatever I find out about This Is the Kit, I'll put a link to that on the stevesmixtapes.com webpage. There's a webpage for every mix. So Clementine March, I looked up her Bandcamp page, and described as a kaleidoscopic collection of songs influenced by jazz, folk, Brazilian music, 90s alt rock, disco, and krautrock. So, I mean, if I'd read that description before, that certainly would have sold me. And I like this a lot. This is really good. And another full connection, fully enough, because the album it's from is called Powder Keg, which is a full song from the late 90s.
There you go. It's interesting they describe it as that, because I hadn't seen that. My take was that it was a folky stereo lab in parts. This is probably one of the noisier songs on the album, but I mean, they've described themselves well, better than I would have done.
Well, it's another one that's gone on the To Listen playlist. So this is her, and this is called Upheaval. moving on then, Matt, to your something borrowed choice. Now, I liked this a lot. This was right up my street. This was. I have a big playlist called Africa, which tends to focus on the sort of early, Zamrock, that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
The African bands doing rough and ready, sort of almost garage punk type stuff, which is really much. But this in particular has a nice story behind it. So I went down a little bit of a wormhole, and I haven't finished with this yet. I'll look at more, but so this was an artist that was sort of rediscovered by a German music producer called Janis Sturz, who was in Morocco in 2012, and he was in a place called Rabat, and he found a little record shop somewhere, or he found a shop anyway, sold all sorts of different stuff. It had a big box of 7-inch singles, which he started rooting through, and he came across this cover of James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, and he thought it was absolutely brilliant. Anyway, it was by a guy called Fadul, and he investigated him and his career. He eventually tracked down his family, who didn't even have a record player and really never heard any of his music. So he was able to visit them and play them his music. But what I also discovered is, he had a brief recording career, Fadul, in the early 70s, but he went on to compose jingles, including one for a Moroccan orange juice brand. He even worked as a circus clown for 4 years and dabbled in hip-hop in the 1980s, rapping over grooves by the Tom Tom Club, of all things. So
Amazing. I'm going to write that down.
Fascinating story. So I've got a couple of links that I'll put again on the webpage for that. Now, the song is called Alzman Sahib. I'm not quite sure how you say it in Arabic, which I believe translates as "time is hard." But surely this is a cover of "All Right Now," is it not?
Yes. I mean, that sort of gives the game away, I think. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I hadn't gone as far as translating the lyrics to try and work out how true to form they are. But what a cover!
How did you come across it?
So I owe my friend Simon, of which I have many friends of Simon, or many friends called Simon. So I have to be clear. This is Beckenham Simon's fault. He tends to send me things where it's lots of covers of stuff. So I've been sent on occasions a billion different versions of Guantanamera. And then occasionally we will pull them all together for a music night where we'll just try and find things that we have no idea what they are. And I think this came out of one of those nights where several cans in, I heard this and thought, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And it sort of turns what is a bit of a hoary staple into what can only be described as like a garage banger. Like if you didn't know the original, you'd just think this was a great 70s garage band track. And it reduces it to its barest bones, but it's fantastic.
زمان صعيب وكلامي عيب وانا في الهم مهموم زمان غدار وعذاب العار وانا في الدنيا مظلوم بكيت بالليل وبالنهار وراسي بالمشاكل محتار زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا صعيب زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا صعيب اشكيت بضرار ضحكوا الناس ظنوني راني مهبول فتحت اسرار بكاو الناس وحسبوني راني مشغول فكر انت في محلي واش عندهم الحق ولا انا المبريز زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا صعيب زمان صعيب زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا صعيب نهار شكيت على مجرالي وانا في الغابات هايم للطيور بكيت على مجرالي وانا في الحزن هايم غنيت بالليل وبالنهار ولا مصايب على راسي كات كتار زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا صعيب زماننا صعيب سيدي زماننا اسمع خطار وعداد العار زمان صعيب ولا غنيتي عيب حبيت حيرة كرهتي غيرة تحدي بكاو كيتي الحكوم سكتي من خلق فهمة تكلمتي تكتب فهمة خاف دار هاد الزمان غدار زمان صعيب زمان غدار حبيتي حيرة كرهتي غيرة زمان 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 تقدر تقولها زمان زمان صعيب سيدي زمان صعيب.
That was a single from 1971, Fadul with Alzman Zaib. Saib, I'm not quite sure how to say it, but clearly a cover of All Right Now. Absolutely fantastic. You can find that on Bandcamp. It's an album called Habibi Funk 002 Alzman Zaib, I think. It was released in 2015. Again, I'll put a link there. I would strongly advise you go and listen to it. It's
To
absolutely...
be fair, many of the Habibi Funk albums, because that's the second of about 7,000. They're all worth it.
Okay.
They're all worth a sniff.
Don't give me more things to listen to, Matt.
That's true. Sorry, I apologise.
I mean, it's funny because as regular listeners we know, a lot of this listening I do in the car, but for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with. I've not been away with work much recently, so these things are mounting up when I'm at home and the life is very much either working or childcare. I don't have the opportunity to listen to the car as much, so it's mounting up, but it's a nice problem to have. On to Something Blue. Now, this is a band that I know of, obviously, and I think I owned a CD by them at some point, although I looked through their back catalogue and none of the titles rang a bell in particular. But I thought of them as a sort of late 90s, early 2000 band, so I was quite surprised to see this came from a 2022 album. I didn't know they were still going. So this is the Apples in Stereo, who I had in my head were quite sort of jangly and harmonies and stuff like that. This is a bit more urgent and raw than I remember them sounding. So anyway, so tell me about your choice of Apples in Stereo.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of an odd choice for a Something Blue category.
Yeah, it's not a
well.
traditional Something Blue choice.
And again, this was one where I had quite a few to choose from. Where could it be the sort of depressing arc? There was someone once told me, I think when I was a teenager, she introduced me to Otis Redding's I've Been Loving You for Too Long and said, you'll like this, you're fucking miserable. Which, I mean, she wasn't wrong, to be fair. And then Jonathan Richman's and the Modern Lovers doing Hospital. That was the other one she played me. Ruined my life, changed my life, sorry. So it could have gone down that road. And then I thought of this song and just thought, it's a beautiful, beautiful, yearning pop song, but the lyrics are sort of about we know all we can know about the stars, but they know nothing about us. And I think it just makes me think you're really alone in the universe. And
it's quite a bit of existential.
It's a bit of an existential crisis moment, and it's also one of those songs that I knew I wanted to get on this playlist, and I couldn't put in there anywhere else. This was nearly track number one, but it didn't quite fit. So yeah, I think it's that yearning, and there's a yearning in his voice that you can hear. And it was weird. I thought that I've not really looked into this because I don't understand the theory of it, but the lead singer or lead guy, Adam something or other, he's now a maths professor somewhere in California, I think, and he makes a big thing about having invented a new musical or new note or something like that using some sort of weird mathematical scale. I won't pretend to. But yeah, it's if nothing else, it's just a beautiful song that makes me question my existence sometimes.
distracted now. Secret lives we have lived inside. We're going backwards now, and you don't even know my name. And I know every constellation. So you never ride, so you never ride. Do you know the reason? Did you wonder why? So you know the time, so you know the time. Did you know the seasons in your mind? Silver scars in your hand, in your hand. I know it's seasonal. Several times I have heard your demand. You're so unreasonable, and you don't even know my name. And I know every constellation. So you never ride, so you never ride. Do you know the reason? Did you ever ride? So you know the time, so you know the time. Do you know the seasons in your mind? And you don't even know my name. And I know every constellation. So you never ride, so you never ride. Do you know the reason? Did you ever ride? So you know the time, so you know the time. Do you know the seasons in your mind? So you never ride, so you never ride. Do you know the reason? Did you ever ride? So you know the time, so you know the time. Do you know the seasons in your mind?
From the 2022 album New Magnetic Wonder, that was the Apples in Stereo with 7 stars. The Something Blue choice, slightly unconventional Something Blue choice of my guest this week, Matt Riches. Right, we're going to take it down with another artist I wasn't familiar with. So this is Cassandra Jenkins. The song is called Hard Drive. And again, I looked her up on her Bandcamp page. This song is mentioned in the text that goes with the album. It says, on Hard Drive, we join Jenkins as she listens to a passionate museum guard whose promised overview of the exhibit on view builds into a monologue of observations on art, politics, feminism, and the human condition.
Well, that's quite the introduction. I mean, that sort of says it. I think, again, I can't really remember how I found out about Cassandra Jenkins. I have a feeling I heard about her on a podcast by Craig Finn from the Hold Steady. Ironically, he does a whole series of podcasts about interviewing musicians and some writers about memory, because he had a
Okay.
theme about memory on like 2 albums ago, but he's managed to keep it. It's called That's How I Remember It. And he's interviewed quite a few people, and I know Cassandra Jenkins was working as a session musician for a while and has played on some of his records.
That's another wedding present connection, or wedding present forum connection, of course, because Gav, not Gav Morgan, who you mentioned, but the other Gav, he is a huge fan of the Hold Steady.
Absolutely. In fact, I missed Gav on Friday night, or last Friday night. We were both at the Hold Steady in Camden for their annual
Yes, he did mention he was
shindig,
there. Yeah.
and normally we managed to meet for a pint beforehand, but I completely messed up my timings and got there about 2 minutes before the band started. But
I don't know Hold Steady stuff hugely well, but I do absolutely adore the song Chill Out Tent.
oh, it's wonderful.
I really, really love that.
Well,
song.
they were playing that on Friday night because it was the 20th anniversary of the album that came, Boys and Girls in America, that came from. So they played that from front to back and all the B-sides.
That's the model for how you can get a narrative into a 3-minute song without fussing too much. Yeah,
they had some a local band come on and do the boy and girl part.
Oh, right, okay.
Towards the end, and the girl did a brilliant job, and the bloke just seemed to be, and I say this as someone who has a boringly monotone voice. intoning into the microphone, and I was in the chiller. Anyway, we're getting away from
Yes. Oh, Cassandra Jenkins.
Cassandra Jenkins. So yeah, I think she worked as a session musician. She had one album before this. She nearly gave up music, I think, before recording this album. And I think for this particular song, she does a lot of sound recording and going around and taking like that, wafting your microphone at a load of fireflies, and then
Field recording.
Field recordings. That's exactly the word.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the lyrics to this came from those sorts of field recordings.
Okay.
But it's just a beautifully reflective, and another one of those existential crisis songs in a way. But I love it.
Yeah.
It's got a saxophone in.
A security guard stopped me to offer an overview on phenomenal nature. She said sculpture's not just formed from penetration. You see, men have lost touch with the feminine. And with her pink lipstick and her queen's accent, she went on for a while about our president. I asked the bookkeeper at the end of the 7th ray to tell me what he knew about Saint Germain. And he told me about chakras and karma and the purple flame, the birth of the cosmos, the ascended masters, and the astral plane. He said, you know, the mind is just a hard drive in this life. The mind is just a hard drive. Teaching me how to drive. I finally got my license when I was 35. Speeding up the west side, changing lanes. He reminds me to leave room for grace. He said, have you been seeing your therapist? You seem a little on edge. Are you always this nervous? I said, yeah. Gemstone eyes caught my gaze. She said, oh dear, I can see you've had a rough few months. But this year, it's gonna be a good one. I'll count to 3 and tap your shoulder. We're gonna put your heart back together. So all those little pieces they took from you, they're coming back now. They'll miss them too. So close your eyes. I'll count to 3. Take a deep breath. Count with me. She said, 1, 2, 3. All right, 1, 2, 3. female point of view. 1, 2, 3. I think it's a horn.
From the 2021 album, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature. That was Cassandra Jenkins with Hard Drive. And I have to say that's yet another one I've had to add to my to-listen list. You really are making me work hard this week, Matt. Right, usual question before the Around the World choice. Are you someone who listens to a lot of stuff that is not from the UK or the US?
Yes and no. I don't go out of my way to go, all right, today I'm really in the mood for some Japanese space rock or something like that, although I'm sure I've got some in my record collection. Yes, I mean, I think sometimes when you look at music from around the world, it's just someone playing guitar, rock, but from a different country. Does that count? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a fair amount, and I've probably got something from most continents. But
Now, your Around the World choice is a marriage of Senegal and Wales, which was interesting. So the Welsh artist is Catherine Finch, who is a harpist, and the Senegalese artist is Sekou Keita. Am I saying that correctly?
I hope so, and I think so. That's how I'd say it.
Who plays the double kora?
Yes.
So again, how did you come across this?
Well, so there's where did I find this? This was something I heard on the Welsh poet Gwyneth Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Might get this wrong. There's two Welsh poets called Gwyneth. Well, there's probably more than two. I can never remember. But she was basically the Welsh poet laureate for a while, and it was on her Desert Island discs. It was definitely Gwyneth somewhere or other. And this, I've ironically, having mentioned the Craig Finn thing, I have a terrible memory. So hopefully, I can send you a link to the right person. But yeah, it was on Desert Island discs, and she played this, and I just thought it was wonderful. And I discovered that the song title, Kefi Lau, I believe.
Horses.
Says cow. Oh, was it horses? I thought it was cows. I've been saying cows for all this year.
Well, I didn't look that up because having lived in Wales now since have I lived in Wales since 20 years actually? 20 years this year I've lived in Wales. My Welsh is rudimentary at best, but I'm fairly confident that Kefalai is horses.
You might be right. I could have sworn it was cows, but never mind. You might be in a better position than me then to attempt to pronounce the album title, because I'm certainly not going to do it. But
I struggled to. Well, it's let's have a look at it because I haven't practiced this. Let's look at it. It's Clwchau, I would say Clwchau Dibon.
That sounds fair.
Clwchau Dibon. I think it means pretend bells. I should have asked one of my Welsh-speaking colleagues to translate it for me. I think that's wrong. But yeah, this is really nice, very atmospheric, and I like the idea of the two cultures colliding and intermeshing. Works nicely. So let's hear it now. So this is Catherine Finch and Sekou Keita with Kefalai. Right then, Matt, onto your left of centre choice. I'll tell you what I wrote down for this one, because as regular listeners will know, I tend to listen to the playlist without context, without looking anything up, at least a couple of times before I look at anything. I wrote down for this one, Good Time Plinky Plonk House Electronica.
I mean, it's almost worth me not saying any more than that, because that's pretty much it. That's bang on exactly what it is.
I wasn't familiar with Hudson Mohawk, great name. His real name is Ross Matthew Burchard. He's from Glasgow. He's a producer and DJ. So what led you to choose this one?
I was having listened to a few of these things, like the Ethan Miller episode where he's got the Elephant Orchestra. I was like, when I remember hearing that one, thinking, oh God, how am I going to? What can I do that's even remotely like that? Do I need to do anything that's remotely like that? No, I don't think I do.
Well, the only person who's challenged Ethan for most left of centre choice,
well,
I think,
it was
Deb Googe,
was with the vegetable thing, which I thought it was really interesting. And then I just thought, well, hang on a minute, let's go. What is left field? What does that even mean? And I know you've had several debates with people about guilty pleasures, and I'm with you that there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure, which arguably means, if we're going to be highfalutin about it, there's no such thing really as left field. Tune is a tune is a tune is a tune, and this is just one of those things. It's just a great tune. It's probably left field for me. I don't listen to a lot of music like this, but I know when I hear something like this and it hits.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Every time it came around, I really enjoyed it.
It's just joy, isn't it? It's a joyous song. I mainly only ever hear it when I'm drunk in someone's kitchen, but those are some good times.
So brace yourself for some good time Plinky Plonk House Electronica. This is Hudson Mohawk with Is It Supposed? Hudson Mohawk there with Is It Supposed from the 2022 album Cry Sugar, the left of centre choice of my guest this week, Matt Riches. Right, now your wildcard choice was an interesting one, Matt. Firstly, because we have had this chosen before. Gracie, as I know him, or Iggy, as you might remember him from the Wedding Present Forum, way back in episode 13, chose The Pigeons of Eldon Street. It's also interesting to me because, of course, it involves Simon Armitage, who I would really like to have on the show. And I have investigated or made tentative inquiries to get him on, but to no avail yet. But I think he'd make for a really good guest. So I don't suppose, as a fellow poet, you have any inside knowledge of how to get in contact with him.
I don't. I have met him once, and foolishly foisted a copy of my book into his hands at a gig somewhere in Lewisham. I told him it was a very good way of levelling a table. I doubt he's ever read it.
You never know. He always strikes me as a nice guy.
He seems like a nice guy. I've seen him read a few times, and he's always very good. I sort of owe Iggy an apology because his is one of the episodes of this I haven't heard yet, and I keep meaning to get back to it. So I thought I was being all dead clever putting this on, but it's still a great song.
So now I do enjoy a bit of poetry, but I'm a kind of a literal minded kind of guy, Matt, you see. So sometimes I do struggle with it. And I have taught GCSE English. I'm a historian by trade, but I have taught GCSE English. And I'm perfectly comfortable and happy teaching of mice and men and inspector calls and all that sort of stuff and the English language stuff. The bit I used to struggle to teach the most was the poetry, the unseen poetry part of it. So I listened to this and I listened to the lyrics and I'm still not 100% sure what it's about. So the song is called Hockney Red. Obviously, I know who Hockney is. But I'll just give you a little bit of the lyric that I picked out and perhaps you can explain it to me. So, dip the brush in the slow red juice, watch the fluid evolve on the lacquered nail. As the pigments resolve on the polymers heal, all day it hardens under your glove. All night the enamel will prove its love. You have pierced the cherry. Now, apart from somebody putting their nail polish on, what's all that about?
It's the poetry of nail varnish names, I think, to me. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I'll probably have to hand my poet's badge in after that.
I was very conscious when I said, so what's all that about? I sounded a little bit like Piers Morgan.
God, no, I'd have punched you through the screen for that. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I think there's a beautiful poetry name or poetic sound to some of the names of nail polish. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's worth looking up. There was an American poet. I want to say Marianne Moore, but I might be getting it wrong. I'll let you know after this. Who was once hired to come up with some names for cars, and she came up with some brilliant names. Again, I'm not going to remember them now, but they're worth looking up. They never used any of them, but there were some phenomenal names in there. So it's always worth hiring a poet to have some thinking in the background, I think.
Speaking of poets as well, I presume you're familiar with Brian Bilston?
I am familiar with Mr. Bilston, yeah. He's probably keeping the poetry industry alive.
I've tried to contact him as well because I think he would make for an interesting guest as well. But I've not had any luck yet getting him on. But I think he would. Yeah, I follow him on Facebook and his stuff pops up every now and again. I always find it very entertaining.
I often get sent his work by people. Have you seen this one? I'd be intrigued to see if he's on here on the Zoom call and he has his camera turned off because he famously doesn't have his face.
Yes, I gather. Yeah. Well, I'm. You
may prefer me to do that, but it's too late
now. No, that's quite all right, Matt. And I have selected the picture. I did email Matt to ask him whether he wanted to use the picture that I already had of him or the one that he sent me, and he instructed me to choose whichever was sexier, which made it a really difficult choice.
I'm really intrigued to see which one you've gone with.
So let's get back to the song. This is Hockney Red.
Push open the door of the wrong bedroom, stalk through the spores of heavy perfume. There in the drawer of the dressing table, flaming desire in a squat red bottle, pearlescent and plush and reeking of booze. Dip the brush in the slow red juice, watch the fluid evolve on the lacquered nail as the pigments resolve and the polymers heal. All day it hardens under your glove, all night the enamel will prove its love. You have pierced the cherry, stoked the inferno, torched the Ferrari, primed the volcano. You're wearing I'm Not Really a Waitress, a punctured heart. Run away with the circus. Life on Mars.
Hockney Red by LYR featuring Simon Armitage from the 2023 album The Ultraviolet Age, and that was the wildcard choice of my guest this week, Matt Riches. Now, Matt, we're on to your finale choice in a moment, but before we get to that, I tend to ask guests this. We're still fairly early on in the year. It's the 13th of March as I'm talking to you, and your cat has just arrived in the room, I see. Behind you. So what's 2026 got in store for you?
At this stage, I don't really know. I can guarantee, well, I can't guarantee because it's never true, but I asked my wife recently if there was any more DIY to do on the house because we seemed like we've been doing it for years, and she said, no, that's it, we're done. So I'm absolutely holding her to that. So that's hopefully good.
She's not going to be like my mum used to do that, but when she decorated everywhere in the house and all the DIY, she would then put the house up for sale and want to move somewhere else.
Well, we've started having those conversations. God, this is all getting a bit long term, isn't it? Because we don't know what once my daughter comes back from university, where are we going to live? Can we move out of London? But I think we're a way off doing that. Beyond that, I'm training for some running things, and then I can't really see beyond that at the moment. Oh yes, turning 50 this year. That's the other.
Oh, okay.
So there's lots of people turning 50.
Well, I have to say that ship has sailed for me, and the fact that my name on most things is Steve 69 will tell you quite how long ago that has sailed for
Fair
me.
play to you. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So how do you feel about turning 50? Is that something that matters to you?
I'm absolutely fine about it now. There's still a month to go, or a month and so to go, so I might start freaking out a bit closer to time. But at the moment, no, it's all good.
Good. All right then. So let's move on to your finale choice. Now, you were very specific about which version you wanted, and when I listened to this, I understand why you wanted this one. It is 9 minutes long, so I doubt I'll be able to squeeze it in. The full length version. It will depend. I try to keep these to about an hour and 20, an hour and a half if I can. If I can get the whole thing in, I will, but it may be slightly truncated. But on every web page for each mix, there is always a YouTube playlist that has all the songs in full. So I would highly recommend listening to it. So this is another band that I've listened to bits and pieces in the past and always enjoyed, but never quite delved. They only actually released one album, didn't they?
So it's a band called Live to Experience. From an album called The Texas Jerusalem Crossroads, which is perhaps as it sounds, a concept album about the second coming of Jesus Christ that casts Texas as the promised land. Make of that what you will. I'm not normally a fan of the high concept, but I remember hearing this or reading about it in an issue of Uncut. in about 2000 and something. And it was one of those rare reviews when you've not really heard anything and thinking, I've got to buy that.
Mm.
I need that in my life. By Christ, I'm going to have that. I think I had to even import it from the States to
That's
get
the
it
mark
at
of
the
good
time.
music journalism, isn't it? If
Yeah.
something inspires you to think, wow, I've got to own that.
And it was, I think the review, if I remember correctly, was written by Alan Jones, who was the editor at the time, who I always used to think was a bit of a prick because he had this column at the end of the magazine was like, oh, my memories of me getting lashed up with musicians in the 70s, which made me really hate him. But
Okay.
but he wrote about this album so well, so I was like, I absolutely have to have this. And then there was a song, I think, on a follow-up CD that intrigued me. I was like, right, so I'm absolutely having this. And it blew my mind listening to it as this sort of weird mix of slightly trebly early U2 like guitars and weird like high choir boy like singing, and then this mad jazz drumming that was sounding like someone was trying to beat the bejesus out of their kit. And I missed seeing them. I never got to see them. And then they reformed for a one-off gig at Meltdown that Guy Garvey invited them to do. And I was straight in like the proverbial rat up a drain pipe to get a ticket for that. And it was one of the most phenomenal, noisy, face-melting gigs I think I've ever been to. It was just this glorious thing. And I wish to God they'd be able to do something else.
I'm fairly confident I know the answer to this, but why were you insisting on having the Peel Session version?
Just because it's long, and the epic part at the end of it, which isn't even on the album, which is why the Peel Session version, it's just a great wig out for a great song. There were loads of last songs to choose that have epic wig outs, but I think you need that for a closer.
Feather the wings, salt the stings to make the crawl to the top, and then take the ball again. Blood-soaked, gagged and choked, lying face on stone, stripped bare, sucking in air. This is my home, it seems, with the rock and the hard places stuck between. The God, man, Christ, cause, the cursed man to the test, and this God, damned cross, crushed in two. My chest, I'm still doing my best, and to the winter time comes a calling. Through the skies, I'm crawling from cloud nine, I'm falling, and then the foliage gone rushing. It's no longer mine, life on cloud nine. Place your dreams in a bottle, smash it to the ground, slip off your slippers and dance all around. It's blood, it's just blood, baby. It's just blood, it's just your precious blood.
Live to Experience with Falling from Cloud 9, recorded for John Peel. And I think that makes for a fine finale to your mix, Matt. People have taken various different approaches to the finale track. Not everyone has gone for the expansive epic, but that's always my choice for how to finish a mix off. So, I enjoyed that enormously. So that's been great. So it really just remains for me to thank you for your time this evening coming on the show. Have you enjoyed compiling your mix and coming on?
I've very much enjoyed compiling my mix. It's made me start thinking about doing it again. It reminded me of the craft that goes into it. It made me dig out an old cassette that a mate did for me in the 90s, which I found, which I will send you a cover of, but a photo of the cover, which is basically the Teletubbies, one saying to the other, "You stink," and the other one telling him to fuck off. From my mate, another mate Simon from Norfolk, which is a wonderful thing. It has the wonderful title as well, "Mince Beef on Stylus."
Okay.
So yeah, naming these things is a good thing. Yes, I've absolutely enjoyed this. I love doing it. I'm going to go back to doing some more playlists, I think, and to be on any podcast that opens with "Sleep Easy, Mr. Parker" is a wonderful thing.